Okay, so first thing we're going to do is everyone have the icon on their computer. You know where it is? Photoshop icon. Okay, you don't. If you don't, did you find it? Okay. So what we're going to do is pull up a window in an Internet Explorer. We're going to do a little exercise today that's going to guide us through a couple of the base tools. Okay. So if you pull up a window in Internet Explorer, type in dart135.blogspot.com. I need to take my Canvas training. I haven't done it yet. So anyway, if you pull this up, you're going to hit our class website. Okay. And so this is information I'm going to put up here. Yes? Question?
What was that website?
Dart. I'm sorry, I should write it on the board. It's just the class name. It's dart135.blogspot.com. Okay? So dart.
Oh, no.
135.
So go to Google Chrome.
.blogspot.com. Okay? All right. So when you open this up and you scroll down, this is where I put stuff up for you. In fact, if you look right there, there's the class syllabus. So if you have a question, look, you can click on it and you can see it and you could go through it. Okay?
You don't have to spell it out all the way.
So
just click that.
what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick little exercise in a couple minutes, but we're not, I just wanted to show you how to get to the blog really quick, okay? So now that we're on the blog, okay, I'm going to minimize this and put it away, okay? So I just wanted to show you where our class blog is and how to get there. We're going to come back in a couple minutes, but I need you to walk you through a couple things. See this right here, selection, copy, and paste exercise? That's the exercise we're going to do in about 5 or 10 minutes. But before we do that, I need to open up Photoshop and I need to show you a couple basics. Okay, so just open that window, you have it, minimize it like that, and it'll put it back down in your little menu bar selection, okay? All right, so I'm going to click on, so I'm going to go for a pause right now because I'm going to delete out everything up to this point. Shh, you guys are coming up on the microphone, so it's recording. So from this point out, I need you to just be and follow, okay? Thanks. No, it's all right. I know he's helping you and I get it. I just pause. Okay, so when you open up Photoshop, most of you guys are going to see this right now, okay? You're going to see this base window. I'm going to minimize mine so it can fit on my screen a little bit, okay? So every single program has a lot of similarities. So if you look up on the very, very top right here, we're going to have all of our menu bar functions. So if I go along this upper strip here, all of those are menu functions. So I'm going to have anything that I want to do, change, create, save, is going to be in that functionality, okay? So for example, we have file. File allows us to save images, allows us to import images, allows us to change the direction of where we're going to save something, all these different options, right? Well, then we have edit. Edit allows us to edit a particular document, and just take your mouse and hover and press edit, and you can see all the options that are listed there, okay? One of the things, though, on edit is you'll notice how some things right now are light gray and some things are dark black. Do you see that? The items that are light gray, that means we can't use those right now because we don't have something set up that we could use them for. So Photoshop even tells us when we can or cannot use something, okay? So if I come over here and I go to image, look at that. I have image mode, I have adjustments. It's really important as a first-time Photoshop user that you think about this, because some people get in this program and they get all confused, and it's just really simple. The menu bar is up on the top, okay? On the left are the tools that we use, different tools that do different things. On the far right, we have a series of accessory options to use. Now, some of you might not have this exact. You might not have swatches, navigator, or layers, or whatever. This actually changes in every version of the software. So watch this. If you come up here, notice this little right, in the right corner here. If I click on this tab, you see that? In the little right corner, if I click on this tab, I can come down here. Look at what some of you might have essentials right now. You might have that. Okay? So if I click on this little tab, these are predetermined settings, because how Photoshop works is we can set up the user interface however we want to. So for us, we're going to be using a lot of layers. We might be using some navigation. We might be using the color picker, some other options. So we can come over here and we can adjust how we want things to be. So I just want you to come over here, because sometimes students will come back in here after today and they'll start working and they'll be like, well, I didn't have that before. And it's like, well, wait, just click this and go down. Go down to graphics and web. Look, it changes. It now gives you icons, because graphic and web, they're going to be adjusting typefaces and fonts, right? So you look over here, it has a character setting. It has a paragraph setting. So if I come back here and I click this again, there's a motion graphics setting. Well, I'm not going to be doing that. We're going to be doing painting. Voila, look, there's a painting setting. So what's really cool is you can sort of prep up and change the far right side. So just to back up there really quick, what is on the very top? We call that the menu bar, right? Where we have File, Edit, Image, Layer, Select, Filter, 3D, all these options. Those are things that we change. The left side are all of our tools, okay? The right side is pretty much like our usable navigation items for the particular task that we're doing, okay? That's very helpful. So right now, if I don't want to use swatches, watch what happens when I grab swatches and I drag it and I put it over here. It puts it separate, and there's a little X in the corner now. Okay, now watch. Let's say I made a mistake. I want swatches. I grab it and I bring it back. Look, it drops back in. Okay, so I don't want swatches right now. I'm not going to use that. I'm going to put it there and I'm going to hit X. It's gone. You've deleted it from the program and you have to buy it again. No, I'm just kidding. So you've just moved it out of there temporarily. So look at Navigator. I come over here. I'm going to take brush presets. I'm going to move them over here and say, do I want brush presets? Maybe I don't want them. I'm going to close that right now, right? So let's say I'm working. Those are my little windows. So if I'm working and there's something I want, like if you open up Photoshop and there's no layers, remember, those are my workable windows, right? So if I come back over up to the top menu bar and I go to Window, and I scroll down here and I go, I want my Layers window. There's Layers. And if I click it, look, it gave me back the Layers window. And then if I take that Layers window and I drag that back over and put it right over here, see how it highlights blue? It's telling me, hey, I'm going to drop it right here, and boom, I've now put my layers back in there. So what's pretty cool about Photoshop, after you've been working in it for a while, you can set up all your workable windows and tools, and then we can even save our preferences. So any computer you go to, you can import your preferences and open it up and start working accordingly, okay? So I don't want layers up here. I'm going to bring my layers and put them down here. I'm going to put them in front of my, sometimes Photoshop does this. See, it split it and put it on the side there. I'm going to drag it and bring it back down and try to put it right in here, right next to layers and channels. I'm going to move this over there. So I have my layers setting, okay? So pretty much that's how we open up Photoshop. Now, what's really cool over on the side, if you take your cursor and if you hold your cursor over one of your tools, it will tell you what the tool is. So I just moved my cursor over. I'm holding it over the top. It's telling me that that tool is a move tool. You'll also notice, see on that little tool, how there's that little tiny little indication, that little triangle in the box. Looks like this, okay? So here's the tool, and then there's a little mark right here. That means that there's more tools inside that box. So if I take my cursor and I press down on here and hold it, look, that there's an artboard tool and a move tool. Okay, so you have to get used to that because you might come over here later. We're going to talk about this tool today, and this tool, this is the Marquee Tool right here. It's like a square tool, and if you look over here, you have a little selection tool. So right now, that selection tool, I'm going to press and hold. See, I have a lasso tool, and then I have a straight line lasso tool called a polygonal lasso tool. Okay, we'll come to that in a minute. All right, so I just want to make sure you understand right now where everything is, because I get students that come in, they start to panic a little bit when I go, hey, create a new file, make it 11 by 17 by 200 dpi, and they're like, what do I do? Where do I go? And they start clicking the tools and they go crazy. So let's walk through that. What we're going to do right now is I'm going to go over to File. Okay, I'm going to scroll down here. Right at the top it says New. So I'm going to click that, and up comes up a window that's going to ask me what kind of file would you like to create. Now, there are predetermined settings in there. All right, so what I'd like you to do, you'll notice up here, see how it says Photo print, art illustration, web. If I click these, there's going to be a series of predetermined windows that have already been created. They're files that already exist there for me. Okay, so what I'm going to do, even though we're technically art and illustration, one of the windows that I prefer to work on in all my classes is just 11 by 17 paper, because it's easy to save. And if you click on the print window, right, and you scroll down here, you're going to see the tabloid setting. That's an 11 by 17 image at 300 dpi. Okay, so if I click that right now, and I select it, and then I go down to create, now you'll look over to the side here. Since I selected the tabloid option, you'll notice that the orientation, you see that little vertical? That means it's going to give me 11 by 17 like this, vertical. But what size are our monitors? They're horizontal. So I want to come over and touch the tab next to it, and I'm going to tell it, no, I want 11 by 17 to be like this, to be horizontal so it's easier to see. I come over here, I hit create. Now, before I do this, you'll notice you have some of these other little options over there. There's one right there called resolution. Resolution, I don't expect you to remember all this, but we're going to cover it just really quickly and then I'll talk about it later. Resolution is really important because if I create an 11 by 17 image and my image is at 50 dpi, which stands for dots per inch, it's going to be a very low resolution. So if I draw something and make it look nice and pretty, just because it looks pretty on the screen, when it goes to print, the printer is now only going to get 50 dots per inch on that resolution, which means it's going to come out very grainy. Okay, so we have standards for resolutions. The industry standard for printing. So if I want to make anything that's going to go into a catalog or an illustration that's going to be printed in a book, the industry standard for printing is 300 dpi. So if you're working on something that's really cool, like you're painting a picture of grandma for your dad, or you're doing something really nice, you need to make sure you're working at 300 dpi, because what a lot of students will do is they will be working on something, spend 20 or 30 hours on it, and they go to print it and it's fuzzy because they made it at 100 dpi. And you can't always go back and then up-res it, because what it does is it blows up the image, and sometimes what that doesn't really fix it. It just means that now you have less amount of pixels per inch. So some of you are like, well, what are pixels? We'll talk about that in a minute. If you take an image in Photoshop and we zoom into it and keep zooming, you're going to get to where you see a little block. And that little block next to a whole bunch of other little blocks is a pixel. So think about it. You were telling Photoshop that in a 1 inch by 1 inch square, there's going to be 50, versus we are now telling it there's going to be 300. Okay, so 300 means it's going to be much sharper, it's going to be crisp, it's going to be clear, and it's going to make a lot more sense. Okay, so that's how that resolution works. What I'm going to do now is hit create. Voila, I've created a blank canvas for me to start working on. Okay, one of the first rules I like to share with my students is that you'll notice over on the right hand side on the layer here, there's a lock on there. Okay, to get rid of that lock, what you're going to do is scroll your mouse over on it and double click it. Boom, boom, like that. And it just says, oh, so you're telling me this is going to be a new layer? Do you want to label this new layer? You don't have to. Just hit OK. And see what it did? It now took the lock off. When you keep that lock, and let me Command Z that, and I'll go back for a minute. Okay? So Command Z, by the way, is undo. Okay? Your Photoshop usually has about 10 to 20 undos automatically put inside it. So before I go forward, one of the secrets about Photoshop is pretty cool are the hotkeys, which are the keys that are on this keyboard that allow you to do quick movements without having to go to the menu bar. So real quick, let's go back up to the menu bar for a second. And if I touch on File, and I'm looking at it right now, do you see all those little commands right there? So if I want to create a new file, next time, if I can remember Control N, see it right there? Control N is create a new file. So what's pretty cool is in Photoshop, we have, now this is a little bit later, I have like 35 hotkeys. So when I'm working, I can make my own hotkeys. So I can flip, I can add paint, I can do this, I can do that, and I just sit there. I don't have to go to the menu bar all the time. Funny story, I worked with a guy once at a studio. His name is Ed, that's all I'll say. And Ed had worked at DreamWorks, and we would work in Maya, and Maya also has the opportunity to have a tremendous amount of hotkeys. And Ed would just go up to the menu bar every time and have to grab something, and it takes like 2 seconds. The problem is when you get used to hotkeys, it's like an addiction, because you're like, dum, 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 and you're putting all these commands, and Photoshop's just reading the commands right through, and it's instantaneous, okay? And it's really fast. So I'm just mentioning this to you now because as you guys go up to the menu bar sometimes, take a look. So remember how we went over to window and we had to create the window for layers? You look over here, what's the layers hotkey? It's F7. So if we happen to be working and our layers is gone and I look on my keyboard and hit F7, look, it just popped right back on the screen. That's the hotkey for that option. So a little bit later on in this class, I'll show you how to add in your own custom hotkeys to make your workflow the way that you want it. We can save those preferences, and then what's cool is you can take them with you wherever you go and always upload it into the machine. Okay, so I'm going to bring layers back over here. I'm going to drag it in there, drop it. I'm going to move it over just a teeny bit. Okay, so what you want to do is make sure you have right now just layers over on the right hand side. You have that window available. Does everyone have layers there? Okay, cool. So remember we talked about right clicking, right, to get that lock off. The reason why we want to take that lock off is when that lock is on there, some of the tools perform differently when the lock is on. So we want to make sure the lock is always off. Okay? All right. One sec. I was going to grab my bottle of water, but I'll go get it when we're done talking here for a little bit. So what we're going to do right now is I want you to, I'm going to show you how to take a brush and how to paint something real quick. And then we're going to select it and move it around. But before we do that, I have to explain the importance of the layers. Okay? Everyone messes up Photoshop and makes mistakes when they first start because you don't pay attention and you accidentally start working on the wrong layer. So if you look over right now, it says layer 0. Layer 0 is what we refer to as our canvas. It's basically like a piece of white canvas right now. Okay? So if I hit E on my keyboard, oops, if I hit E and I come over here, which I'm telling it to erase, and if I go like this, do you see what I'm seeing now? Underneath my canvas, I'm seeing a checkerboard. That's Photoshop telling me, hey, you can't go any far. You've hit the very bottom. It's checkerboard here. Okay. For us, when we're working, that white piece of paper, or it could be a tone piece of paper, is our base layer. So we want to make sure we're working on other layers up above. Okay. The cool thing about Photoshop is a lot of times there's 3 different ways to do something. Okay. So if I want to create a couple layers, because we're going to take a brush right now and paint. So if I were to take my brush right now, and if I were to come over here and paint, anything I'm drawing or writing is appearing on the main layer. That's not good. I want it on a separate layer, right? So to add in a new layer, here's a couple things that you can do. Step number 1, I could come over here, I could right click on the layer, and I could come up here, and I could tell it to, they have a new layer option. Actually, maybe I'm thinking of my hog. Anyway, forget that. The easiest way to do it is just to come, actually what I was going to show you, if you grab the layer and you drag it to that little icon, it'll put another layer, it'll copy that existing layer, right? That's not what we want to do. Okay, what we want to do is you notice that little icon down there, it's like a piece of paper next to the folder. If you click that, it puts a blank empty layer up above. So watch, I'm going to click it 3 times. And now I have I clicked it 4 times. I have 4 layers sitting up above right now. And here's the bestest, most awesomest thing about this program is you can paint on a layer, make a mistake, and you didn't lose anything because it's on a separate layer. You just need to remember how the layer worked and where it is. So right now I'm on layer 4. Watch what happens. I come over here and I draw, and then I hit layer 4. I hit the eyeball next to it. That turns it off and on, and then it's gone. See that? It's pretty efficient, right? it's disappeared. So if I didn't like that drawing I did, I could then come back and then I could draw something else. I could be over here, I could be working on a character, and I could draw something. Oh, I don't like that, I can turn it off. In fact, if I don't like it, I could actually select the layer, and what if I wanted to, if I come over on my keyboard and hit backspace, it deletes the layer, okay? If I didn't want to delete it that way, I could select all by hitting Command A, and it selects everything that I drew on that layer, and I can hit delete, and that's gone. The layer's still there, okay? All right, so that's our layer settings. Our layers are really important later on, especially when we start getting into painting and texturing, because we can have multiple layers on top of each other, and they all affect the overall image that we're seeing. Because remember, you have to think of it like this. There's stacks of paper, and we're looking from the very top of all those papers. Okay, so what we're going to do right now is, before I go any further, I have to show you how to save really quick. Okay, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to click on my desktop. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say new folder. I'm going to put a new folder there, and I'm going to label this exercise 1. Okay, there. So I have that folder that's on my desktop right now. Okay, so now I'm going to pull up the window. I'm going to go over to File, and I'm going to go over to Save As. Okay, and it's going to tell me, Phil, where do you want to save this? Usually your computer sometimes picks other defaults. So I'm going to come over here and click Desktop, and I'm going to come back to my desktop, and if I look, there's my file I just created called Exercise 1. I'm going to double click it open, and then I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to call this EXER, Exercise 1, okay, and then I'm going to hit Save. All right. Now, before I save it, I want to teach you guys good habits and skill sets. I'm going to actually put Exercise 1-1. The reason why I'm going to do that is 20 minutes later when I'm working, I'm going to come back and I'm going to save as Exercise 1-2. Okay? Because in Photoshop, if you keep saving all on one file and the file goes corrupt, you have lost everything. But if you're taught at a newbie stage to save in increments, you lose only 20 minutes of work. Does that make sense? And the way to work is when I'm working in Photoshop, so we're going to have EXER. You could even abbreviate it if you want. If I have, let's say I have Exer 1-1, I'm working for 20 minutes. I save as 1-2, 1-3, and then say by the end of the day I'm all the way down to 1-5, right? Well, guess what? All I do is I keep these 3, I delete these, and then these right here actually have 20-minute intervals in between them. So if that goes corrupt, how much time have I lost? 20 minutes. And I open up this one, and then I start from where I left off. A really bad habit is that everyone's working and they call their file like, you know, painting of grandma. And then all of a sudden something happens in it's really easy in Photoshop to accidentally compress all your layers. And then you go back and you open it and you go, oh my God, all my layers are gone. Sorry, you compressed them. You didn't save. Okay. Later on, I'm going to teach you another method that'll save you time, where you end up saving, I'm just going to mention it now, we end up saving 3 folders. One folder will be called a working folder, one folder will be called a flattened folder, and one folder will be called for print. You don't have to write this down, I'm just mentioning it to you and I'll remind it to you why. That will be your Photoshop file with all its layers, it's very heavy. That will be your Photoshop file that's now been flattened down to one image, and that'll be your Photoshop file that's ready to go to print that has color adjustments in it, so it goes to the printer and comes out the way that you want it. That way you don't end up affecting your file multiple times, okay? All right, so now I'm going to save Exercise 1-1 in that. I'm going to hit Save, okay? This window comes up, maximize compatibility. Just hit Don't Show Again and hit OK. I hate that window, okay? All right, so now what I've done is I've saved my basic information that's on there. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you how to bring an image into Photoshop, and we're going to adjust that image using a couple of the selection tools. So I'm going to cover the selection tools, the wand, and a couple other little elements in just a second here. Okay, so let me pause for 1 sec. Okay, sorry, I'm backing up here for just a second because I didn't turn the recorder on and I stopped it. So remember, we went to the blog really quick and we were talking about downloading the images. To download the images, if I grab it right now and move it, it's a smaller image. So we click on the image, then we right click on this and tell it to save as, and we're saving that in our folder that we already created. Okay, that's really important that we get them in the folder. The reason why, a couple of you grabbed the image and dragged it right to Photoshop. That's one way to do it, but then what happens if you ever need the image again? It's gone. You don't have the original image. So it's a good train of thought to just save the image really quick and put it in the folder, all right? Anyway, so where you should be after you have that all done, your folder should look like this. Exercise 1, you should have a Photoshop file that says exercise 1-1, and you should have these 3 images inside your folder. Okay, so what we're going to do now, I want to show you there are a couple different ways to bring these images into your folder. Okay, way number 1, into Photoshop. Where to have them in the folder. So process number 1, watch, I'm going to do one at a time. I could grab one, drag it to the PSD icon, and boom, it shows up. But when Photoshop brings it in, what's nice is it brings it in separately. So if you look up here, now I have exercise 1.1, and then it grabbed in and brought in high-res field right there. Do you see that? That's pretty cool. It brings it in separate so you don't make mistakes, okay? However, though, some of you might have done this. You might have had Photoshop opened. This is how I do it sometimes. You grab it and you go like, uh-oh. You grab this image and then you drag it like this and you drop it in there. And then you hit enter and it put it in. The problem is when it does that, Photoshop treats it as what's called an indexed file. So if you look over here, let me show you the difference real quick. Okay. Do you see this right now? Look at the layer icon. Do you see how it's one big pretty picture in that icon? If I come back over here to this, that's not a pretty picture. It's cut off in the corner. It's an indexed. What an indexed file is it's like a different image that isn't rasterized yet. It means that Photoshop says, I don't know what you just gave me, so I'm going to index the dang thing. So it indexes it, which means you can't go in and select it, erase it, or do anything. You have to do something what's called rasterize the file. So if I come over here and click on this layer right now, and I were to right click it, just bear with me for a minute, and if I come up here, you'll see one of this word, rasterize layer. When I tell it to rasterize layer, it now gives me the full size pretty image. See that? Okay, so if you happen to drop all your images into Photoshop, like if I grab this one and drop this one back over here, do you see the weird cross and the X on there? That means it's going in as an index. So that means I would have to right click it. But now here's the thing that's frustrating to me. In my file, my exercise, I have all these images stacked on top of each other. That could be hard to see because I have all these layers on here to me. So I'm going to delete that and hit delete, and I'm going to delete that layer. What I like is when I grab my images and I bring them over and I bring them into Photoshop this way, they are now sitting next to my other file. That's great because then I could select, I can be working on my artwork here and I can go like, oh, well, I want to go over and I want to get a part of this and bring it in. I can now select part of that and I can bring it into my file. It makes it easier for me to transition instead of having 5 or 10 images all stacked on top of each other and I can't find them. Does that make sense on how to work? Okay, so now that I have this here, what we're going to do is we're going to come over, go to this high-res grassy field right here, okay? Out of habit, remember, sometimes tools work differently. First, double-click the background layer and get rid of the lock and hit OK. The lock's gone, okay? Now, we're going to use some hotkeys. We're going to say Command A, and when I hit Command A, what it just did is it put what I call ants, but it's selection. So we call these little ants. They look like little ants. See them blinking a little bit? They look like ants moving. Okay? That's Command A. Now, hit Command D and they go away. So Command A means to select all. Command D means to deselect. Everyone with me? Good. Now, let's say I wanted a special part of the image and I don't want to use Command A. I'm going to come over to the Marquee Tool, which is that square little guy right here. Make sure you have the square one. And then if I drag and use my mouse button, I can drag and select a part of the image that I want very efficiently. Do you see how I did that? And once I get that, all I have to do to move that into my image is say Command C, which is copy, and then I go to my image and hit Command V, which is paste. However, though, we want to bring the whole image over. So I'm going to hit Control D to deselect. I'm going to hit Control A, which selects the whole entire piece. I'm now going to hit Control C. So if I didn't want to hit Control C and I wanted to be old school, like my buddy Ed Sherla, oh, I said his last name. Anyway, it's all right. He's a nice guy. He'd laugh. I could come up here to edit and say copy. And what's next to copy? The hotkeys, remember? Control C. So I'm going to come up here. I hit Control A, which selected all. I'm going to hit Control C, and I'm going to go back to my main image here, which is the 300 DPI, and I'm going to hit Command V, which is to paste. And you will notice something that just happened. This is where students get confused. In Photoshop, they go, well, it looks all high res there. How come it's high res there, but when I pasted it into my 300 DPI image, it went small? That's because the DPI of the image I gave you was smaller. Okay, so what's cool, if you want to know what size it was, select that field right there and go up and go under Image and scroll down to Image Size, and it'll tell you this image here is 16 by 22, but only 72 DPI. That's all right. I put it up there a little bit low res so it could fit on the blog, and you can drag it without outweighing your folder. Okay, but I'm just showing you this is how on any image you grab, you can always go check the DPI setting that's listed. Okay, so what I'm going to do, select that. Let's go over to here, hit copy and paste. Okay. All right, and then after you hit copy and paste, I want you to hit V on the keyboard. Okay, so watch this real quick. Everyone look up real fast. I know you're about to do this. Look over at my toolbox. Let me make it a little larger because we're recording this, right? If you look over on my toolbox, I'm not touching my mouse right now. Watch what happens when I hit B. It jumps down to brush. Do you see that little icon just lit up? Now what happens when I hit V? It jumped back up. V is the move tool. Okay? Watch what happens when I hit L on my keyboard. It goes to the lasso tool. Oh my God. The keys start with the first letter of the tool. A breakthrough in science, right? What happens when I hit M? I go to the Marquee Tool. So the Marquee Tool is the selection tool. Yes, sir?
It's not even opening. I did the copy, the Control C.
Okay, hold on. Okay. Here's the thing about memorizing your hotkeys. If you make a correlation between what the tool does, you understand it. Okay. So V is the move tool, right? So, but when you hit V, V has a point, and see how the top tool has the little points on it? That's how I remember it. V and the points. That makes sense? Okay. M is simple because that big dotted line tool is called the Marquee Tool. So you think of Marquee and you think of M, and that's it. The Lasso Tool starts with an L, so it's L on your keyboard. So look at my tools right here in the upper left-hand corner. Watch. I'm going to hit M. It goes to Marquee. I'm going to hit V. It goes to the Move Tool. Wait. Hold on. Now it goes to the Move Tool. I hit M. It goes to the Marquee. I hit L. It goes to the Lasso. I hit B. It goes further down to a brush. Okay? So what we're going to do really quick is the image that we have selected, we're going to make that full size on our screen. I purposely gave it to you smaller because I'm going to teach you how to quickly transform something. It's really easy. We could go to the menu bar and go under Edit and go to Transform. Okay, but if I go on my keyboard, so here's how the tools work. The tools are just a button press. And the action that we're telling it to do has control. So when we're telling the action of, we're going to say, I'm going to select all, that's Control A. I'm going to copy, Control C. I'm going to paste, Control V. Now what we're going to do, we're going to do another action. We're going to transform this to a larger size. So I'm going to hit Control T, and when I do that, it just put a series of bars around there. So now watch what happens. If I just grab one of these bars, it starts to scale it, right? But if I hold Shift, Shift will keep it proportionally scaled. Do you see that? Okay. So I'm going to hold Shift while I'm moving the arrows, and I'm going to scroll my image up full size right now, and I'm going to scroll it a little bit to where it gets to there, and then you'll notice I have a little bit of white left. I'm just going to grab this and stretch it this way. No one's going to notice the difference, and I'm going to hit Enter. Okay? Let me hit Command Z, and we'll back up on that. Okay? That's where you are right now. So number one, make sure you're on the right layer. So look at your layers and the layer that has the image in it, right? Which is right here. So if I have layer 1 selected right now, I'm on the wrong layer. So I go to layer 2, that's where my image is, right? And then I'm going to hit Control T on my keyboard. Boom. Control T. T. T is in Tom. T is in transfer. We are going to transfer size, transfer scale. Control T. When I hit Control T, it puts those little bars around my image. Do you see them? The little squares in the line. So then what happens if I go touch one of those and I just pull it, it makes the image all wonky, right? So if I hold Shift, now watch. What if you do that by accident? You're, oh no, I ruined it. Watch. Hit Control Z real quick. Look at what it does. It puts it back to where it was. Control Z takes you a step back. Okay? So now that I have that, I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to pull it up there to the top of the screen. I'm going to pull this down to the bottom of the screen like that. Okay, I'm going to move it over a little bit. You're like, wait, how did you move it? It just gives me the move tool when I'm doing a transform. It puts it right in the middle. It makes my life easier. I don't have to tell it. It just shows it right there. I'm going to move it like this, and then I'm going to pull it over like this. So on my screen right now, I should have a full image of that field. Is everyone with me? If you're not, let me know, and I'll come help you real quick. Okay? So here's the cool thing. Some of you are like, wait a minute. How did we just take a 72 DPI image and enlarge it to fit a 300 DPI image, and there's no pixelation? That's a good question. Most of your cell phones are programmed to take pictures at 72 DPI, but they take them at like a large size, like 11 by 22 inches. So they're a large file. So what somebody figured out is, hey, we could keep the DPI low as long as it's a large file size. Then when you go to send it as a message, we'll put software in the phone that automatically resizes it, keeps it 72 DPI, but now moves it from 11 by 22 inches down to 4 by 6. That happens in your phone. Because in the very beginning, when phones were first out there, they didn't have that. People couldn't send images back and forth. They didn't have the software to resize. Okay? So is everybody here right now? Okay? No. Anyone not? It's all right if you're not.
You're in the wrong layer.
It,
Layer 4.
so if you're in the wrong layer right now, you wouldn't be able to resize. Does that make sense?
The names are arbitrary.
Yeah. The names are, we can, in fact, let's label our layer right now. Take your cursor with your mouse, double click on your image, and I'm going to call this field. F-I-E-L-D. I double clicked on the name of the other layer. You'll notice it lit up, and I hit enter, and now I've called that layer field. So the names of the layers, they spit them out in numerical order, and then you're allowed to change them, which is really cool. Okay? So give me a second. Let me pause. Okay. Recorder's back on. So what we're going to do really quick, before we go anywhere else, we've now imported something. We've transformed it. Let's, just out of habit, let's save over our other file. So let's go back to File, come down here to Save As. I'm just going to resave it as the same file right now because I haven't done too many changes. I hit Save. It asks me, do you want to replace it? I hit Yes. once I've done a little bit more work, I'll save it as version 2, right? Okay, so now what we're going to do is come back over to this other, right here. You see this? That image, the other field with the clouds? I want you to come over to this, press M for Marquee, and I want you to drag over only the cloud section right there. See that? Select, so you're selecting just the clouds. And then on your keyboard, hit Command C. So what was your name in the back there again? Jocelyn, you might have to open up the 2 other images that are in your folder because we had to restart Photoshop. So grab your other images, drag them on the Photoshop icon, and bring it back up. Okay? So once I get the clouds, right, everyone follow with me? Okay. Okay. Take your marquee. M for marquee. It's all right. We'll be all right. Who doesn't have it? The image. If you're stuck, here, let me come over. Let me hit resume real quick. So look, we have this image up right now. I've selected just the top of the sky. Everyone with me? Yeah. Hit Control C. Go back, touch your main file, and hit Control V. And it pastes the image right there. Hit V, which is your move tool. Put the cloud up on top. Go hit Control T. And pull up the clouds. And put the new clouds on top of the image. Like that. Okay?
Photoshop work.
Huh?
Great Photoshop work.
I know, right? Next we'll be doing bikini models. No.
Oh, nice.
Right? No, I'm just kidding. Well, that's the joke because a friend of mine back in the day with Photoshop, that was one of his first jobs, was like, they were all these like bikini car models. And the girls thought they were like really good looking, but they really weren't because he had to spend like 20 hours for each person, like photoshopping the face and taking out blemishes. And anyway, so you see what I just did? I just copied and pasted another set of clouds and I put them on top of my original image. Okay, and it blended in really quick. Pretty good. There's a little bit of there's a crop mark down there. We could address that later, but we're not going to worry about that. I just want to show you, right now we're working on the principles of understanding how to open up other files, how to copy and paste and bring them in. Okay? All right, now, go ahead, turn this off real quick. Let's go grab something a little bit bigger to bring in. So the third image you should have is that robot right there. Okay? All right? So does everyone have the robot up? Okay? So bear with me for a minute. Everyone look up here. I know some of you guys are all eager and you're messing with tools, right? So if I want to zoom into my object to look at it, there's a couple ways that I could do that. Okay? Number one, my favorite way is if I hit on my keyboard Control plus or Control minus, look at what happens. Control plus brings me in, Control minus brings me out. I prefer that way because it's really easy. However, some people prefer the navigator. Does everyone have the navigator open up this window right here? Yes? If you don't have, does everyone have the navigator open? If you don't have the navigator open, come over to your window, menu bar, and scroll down and find navigator and touch it, and it'll open up the window. Okay? The navigator, you see it's showing me right now, this is what you're looking at, Phil, with that red box. Okay? If I grab the little icon underneath it, look at what it does to the navigator. The navigator is now telling me, oh, you're looking at this part. So that means I could grab the red little window and I can move it around and I can navigate parts of my image. Also, check it out, guys. What am I looking at right now on the screen? I'm looking at pixels. That's right. So when we talk about 50 pixels per inch or we're talking about 300, there they are. Just one little pixel is what's making up my image. Okay? All right, so zoom into your image. What we want to do is we want to bring in our mech right there to our image. However, though, we have one problem. We don't want to bring in all that gray. We want to just select just the mech, the robot, and bring it into the image. So how are we going to do that? Well, there are a couple different ways to do that. One way is that if I come over here, I haven't introduced you to the Lasso Tool. So watch this. If I select this tool right here, L for lasso, you'll see you have a curved lasso and a straight lasso. So I want you to do this really quick. First off, click, everyone take the lock off. Remember, if you don't take the lock off, it functions different. Click the lock off on the image, hit OK. All right? Then everyone press L, take your lasso, and make a small circle in the left-hand corner and hit delete. And what do you see? You see the checkerboard, which is what we want. We want to get rid of the gray. So technically, if I wanted to, I could take this lasso tool and I could go along part of my robot like this and I could select it. But that might take a little while to do. And it could be very tedious, okay? And when I zoom into my character, sometimes if my wrist shakes a little bit, like this, my line shakes and it doesn't look well, okay? So go back to lasso, press and hold and select the Polygon Lasso underneath. This is a great tool because when the Polygon Lasso, so real quick, did everyone follow that? Go back to the lasso selection, press and hold, go to the Polygon Lasso underneath. Now when I go to select, look, it's giving me straight lines. Do you see this? See how it does straight lines? Everyone with me? If you're not with me, I'll come back. Okay, good. Just making sure. So the cool thing about the straight lines is on a character like this, you see all those edges on them? That allows me to get straight lines around there very fast and very efficiently. Okay, so if I wanted to, what I could do, by the way, to close this lasso, we double tap. Dunk, dunk. Oh, wait, hold on. You come back to the very front and you touch the end where you started. You see that? It closes it. Okay? Now, if that's not the selection that you want, hit deselect. Now, let's say I'm making a selection. Make a round selection with your lasso and close it, right? Let's say I accidentally selected something in the selection that I don't want. Pretty much every tool in Photoshop has the functionality of going to either a forward or reverse, okay? By pressing the Shift key or the Control key, or on a Mac, your Apple key. So watch what happens. Let's say I made that selection and I didn't want to select something in the middle. Look at my lasso icon. Can everyone see it on the screen? If I hit the Shift button right now, what do I get next to it? I get a plus. So that means if I come over and I hold Shift and tap and close that, I just added a selection. You see that? To my other selection. Okay? Let's say that selection I just did there, I don't want it. So if I come over and with my lasso, if I press on Alt right now, I could come over, oops, I can press and I could go like this and I could take out that selection I wanted to. Notice I have a negative mark next to my lasso tool now. You see that? Okay? So a lot of the tools have changing functionality when you hit either Shift or Alt or Control on them. Okay? So that's important for me because as I'm making selections, if I accidentally make a selection that I don't want, I come back and I hit Alt. So let's say my selection, I want to take off the bottom area. I'm going to hit Alt right now. A minus goes next to my tool, and then I could come in here and I can subtract, and there it is. I took it off. Oh, but there's one little round area I wanted to add in. I come back and I hit Shift, and I add it in. See how that works? It works on either of the lasso tools. It's very useful. Okay, now we could go around and select. I could be mean, which I was tempted to do, and say, go take the lasso tool and select all around that robot. Especially something that happens sometimes is you're selecting, you accidentally double click, and then Photoshop connects it, and then Photoshop does this weird connection thing like that sometimes, and then you just have to start all over. However, I'm gonna save you a little bit of time here. Okay, so if we come over here under the lasso tool, there's a tool called Quick Selection. Underneath there, there's a tool called Magic Wand. Select the Magic Wand tool real quick. Okay, Also, what is the hotkey for magic wand? If M is for marquee, W, and it says it right there when I press on it, right? So, when I grab the magic wand tool, does everyone have it grabbed? Watch what happens when I come over and I touch the gray. It goes around and it selects all the gray for me. However, though, watch real quick. If I hit delete, it's selected into part of the mech. Okay? So when I use that tool, I have a tolerance setting. Every tool in Photoshop has adjustability in it, right? So come over here really quick. Hit deselect. Go back to tolerance. You should all be in the magic wand tool. Go back to tolerance, come up here and type in 10 real quick, and then come back and touch the gray. And now look at what happened.
Sorry, where's tolerance?
It's when you have the magic wand tool selected, it's up on the top under the menu bar. It's right here.
I don't think W is magic wand. It's different.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, well just go ahead, go under the lasso. Just look up here, go under the lasso tool. You don't have to use the hotkey. Just go up under, follow me, go under the lasso tool, click that icon, and come over and drop down to the magic wand tool. Okay?
Okay, so you can put W twice.
Yeah. So, okay. So you'll notice when I'm on that tool, it has the settings up here. So now that I adjusted the tolerance to 10, what happened? It selected more of the gray than it did the interior of my little robot guy, right? See that? Okay. So real quick, hit deselect. What if my tolerance was set at 50? Then come back and touch. And a lot of the line starts to go inside now, part of the robot. So the tolerance setting is a ratio control that's telling the computer about pixelation. It's guiding it to say go really tight or go really loose. Okay? So if I come back here, hit deselect, go back to tolerance, type in 5. And then come in here and touch the gray. And it's going to be pretty tight along most of the edge. But you'll notice that down here by the feet, there's a natural gradient of gray in there. You see that? Mm-hmm. Photoshop can't determine and pick that up, so it's going to leave it alone for you. And that's exactly what it did. So it left it alone right now. So go hit delete and delete out all the gray. Okay? And you'll notice you have a little bit of gray down by the feet, which you have to go in and manually select with the lasso tool. So come back over then, select your hard edge lasso, come over here, and then start pressing along the edge. If you have to hit Control plus to zoom in, come across the base of the feet, like so. And you don't have to do it the whole thing. You could do it in parts like this. And just say, I'm going to do that part and come over here, double click, and then I'm going to hit delete, and I deleted that part of the grade. You see that? Okay? All right? Now, deselect. I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to do the other foot now. And I hit delete. And now you should be left with just your robot, like that. Am I going? Okay, let me pause the recorder. Probably jumping ahead too fast. Thank you. There, now it's on. Okay, so if I were to hit Command-All right now, it's going to put a marquee around everything. If I accidentally left a little bit of gray somewhere on there that I can't see right now, it would be there. Okay, so here's a cool little trick I'm going to show you on how we could select just that item right there and copy and paste it. Watch. Hit Command-All. Okay. Hit Command-All and you'll get the ants around the whole entire border, right? Press V, which is the move tool, and hit one arrow. And it now selected the whole entire guy for us. Okay? You see that? So I'll tell you again. Command A, puts a selection around the whole entire thing. Don't expect you to remember this. It's just sort of cool when you know these little things. Hit V, which is the move tool, and hit one arrow, and Photoshop will select everything that exists on that layer, and now I can see I don't have any little bits of gray anywhere. Okay?
The arm.
Well, yeah. I think that's a shield or something, so that's okay.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, that's part of it. All right. So are you guys good over there?
Okay.
He's okay. That's all right.
Got it.
Got it?
Yes.
Between. Okay. So now I'm going to come back. My guy's selected, right? I'm going to copy him. I'm going to come back over here to exercise, and I'm going to hit paste. Okay. And there's my mech now in my field. Okay. All right. But he's really small. I want to make him bigger. So what are we going to do? Hit Control T to transform. I'm going to hold Shift, and I'm going to make him larger. Make him so he's about this big in my foreground. Okay? Is everyone good with that? Okay. All right, there's our mech. He's in our field now. Okay. Okay, everyone should have this image on their screen. And what I'm going to do really quick, we're going to go back to Mr. Mech. Okay, and our mech file. And we talked about, we've deleted all the gray. Remember, we went in with our selection tools. We went in with the wand. We adjusted the tolerance of the wand and then deleted most of the gray. And after that was done, we went in with the lasso tool to select the areas that we couldn't grab, right? Right. So now that we have that done, we have just the mech. So there's a couple ways I could select this mech. One is let me try that other old school way. It's weird when I don't have option on here. It's different on, nope, it's not that, is it this? There's a different way on a PC and Mac. There's an easy way on a Mac to do it. Maybe it's tab. Nope, that's not it. Oh, that wasn't good. Okay, so I'm going to do it my old-fashioned way, which is select all. I hit V, which is the move tool, and I hit one arrow, and it selects everything for me, right? So I'm going to copy him right now, and then I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to paste. Boom. And then I paste him into play. Once he's inside the set, he's too small, I'm going to hit Control T to transform scale. When I hit Control T, I hold Shift, I drag him up, and I'm going to get my guy to be about this big. Once he's in there, okay, I move him over to the side. My mech is now standing on the grass. The problem is that he does not look realistic because he is standing on grass, and the grass is not overlapping him anymore, right? So what I'm going to do is go down to the field layer and then take my M for Marquee, and I'm going to select right here that he's standing on. And just to be safe, a nice little option is knowing that I have the opacity setting in a layer. So if I click on the mech layer and I come over here and I drop the opacity down a little bit, it allows me to see just to make sure I'm selecting the right area, right? Right. So after I've done that, I come down to the field. I have the right area selected. I hit Control C to copy that chunk of the field right there, okay? And then I'm going to come back up here. I hit paste, and what it does is it pasted the grass right there in the same place, and I go back to my mech and I raise his opacity to where he is, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I come back up here and I'm going to select the layer, which is the overlap of grass on top of him. I'm going to hit Control plus. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, okay? Now, we're going to switch to our pen has a B mode for brush, and on the back is an eraser. If I hit B right now on my keyboard, that's the hotkey that brings me to brush. So if I click that really quick, right, and I come back up here, and if I have that little bullseye, do you see the bullseye that's present? Okay. When that bullseye is present, if I hit my far right button on my mouse, it gives me my map of all my brushes. This is very useful for me because now I can come over here and select a different type of brush. Okay, I'm going to select like a basic round brush that you guys might have that might look like this. Here, hold on. Let me make these a little bit larger so you can see. See that? If you guys have a round fuzzy guy like that, that means that's a soft edged brush. If it's a bright white circle, that's a hard edged brush. So if you have this, grab that selection right there. You got it? Okay, just touch it and then come back to the canvas. Guess what? You've now touched a brush, and that brush is loaded into your pen controls. So now watch what I'm going to do right here, okay? I could switch to my eraser, or I can hit E on my keyboard. So right now I'm in brush mode. Look at what happens if I hit E. It takes me to the eraser tool. So I want you to get familiar with these because there's actually two different ways that you can use your eraser. You could be in brush mode and flip. Oh, there's my $100 pen just lying on the floor. So I could be like this, and I could flip and use the eraser, which is automatically preset on here. Or I can go to E. So if I go to E right now, which I'm on E, and I right click, I need to tell it that I'm on that round soft. I'm going to want my soft eraser tool, okay? But remember, you don't always have to be on E. You can be on B and flip your pen, right? So now that I have that, if you look up at the top, every brush has an opacity setting. It has a control. So look really quick. I'm at 100% opacity, right? And look what happens. Hold on, I hate that little mark. How do I get rid of that thing? Is it shift? Oh, it's going to drive me nuts right now. What is the hotkey to get rid of the little... What's the hotkey to get rid of the crosshair to go back to the circle size? I know what it is. Hold on. This out. All right, look really quick. If you have right now on your eraser, you have this, just the bullseye. The bullseye sucks because you can't see how big your eraser is. Hit caps lock really quick, and you should have that. Are you on eraser? Hit E, and then hover your little guy over the screen. Okay, and when it's hovering over the screen, you should have a circle. All right? You can either be in brush or erase. It's up to you.
It was really, really tiny, so it was a bullseye either way.
Okay, so it's a bullseye. But the difference is this. If you hit caps lock, you go back to this little bullet, little target site. We don't want that. We want this, and this is why. On your keyboard, above Enter, you have bracket keys. Those bracket keys, look at what happens if I press them. See that? I go up and down on the size of my eraser right now. So the bracket keys, above your Enter button, you have the two bracket keys, right? You guys find them? Okay, so go to your eraser or your brush, go up to your bracket keys, which are above the Enter button, and hit the right bracket, and it goes bigger. The left bracket goes smaller. You see that? I'm getting scared. Everyone with me?
Yes.
Okay, the reason why that's important is look at what would happen right now if I came over to my paste and I just went right through it at 100%. Oh, wait, why did it do that? It painted black because I'm in brush mode. Oh, hit Command Z. I'm going to flip my pen over to the eraser, and now you'll see it erases the green. Okay, the problem is what? The problem is it erased too much, too quick. Is everyone with me? So what I'm going to do right now is make my eraser smaller by hitting the brackets, and then watch what happens to my opacity when I hit a number. If I hit, everyone look up here real quick. If I hit 3 right now on my keyboard, what did my opacity just do?
30%.
It went to 30. What happens if I hit 4? It went to 44%. If I hit 0, it goes back to 100%. If I hit 0.5, it goes to 5%. Okay? That's important because now I can control the strength of a brush or an eraser by adjusting its opacity size. Okay? Hold on 1 minute because I see eyes of confusion in the right. Okay, so now you have the grass. Watch what I'm going to do really quick. It's important whenever you're using a brush or an eraser, which are the same tools, you understand the size of the tool is going to affect what we're doing, and the opacity of the tool is going to affect it, right? So now that I'm here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my eraser, okay, and I don't want to be too big, so I'll erase too much. I want to be a little smaller. And if I press 3 on my keyboard, that goes to 30%. And then I'm going to come over here and watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to lightly start to feather around and erase that green paste on top. And I'm going to get part of his foot to blend in to part of the bush. Now I can go lower than 30, right? So let's go to 20. I hit 2 on my keyboard. I now come in here and I'm like, whoa, look at that. His feet are actually starting to look like he's in the grass. Okay. Wait, what do you do? There, so look, you see how his feet look now like he's in the grass? Because all I've done is copied and pasted part of the layer. I put it on top, and I'm erasing. So look at it's just a cheat. See it? Off and on. That's it. That's what I've done. I'm now erasing, blending my character into his environment. Okay, I'm going to go through this because I didn't hit record by accident. So what I'm going to do right now is I have that green grass that's up on top of my character right here. It's over his feet. So we talked about going to eraser, right? We hit E. Or if you're in brush mode, you flip the pen over and you're on eraser, okay? But it's easier if you just hit E, right? I have an eraser selected. And we talked about the opacity settings. If I come in at 100%, it's going to do that when I touch the screen. We don't want to do that. So what I want to do is I want to go down to like 30. So if I hit 30, and then by hitting the brackets adjust the size of my eraser size. Okay, that's important because if I erase it this big, what's it going to do? It's going to take off the whole thing. I want to affect small areas. So I'm going to make it a little bit smaller, and I'm going to come in here like this. And where the hard edges are what I'm going to start with first. You always try to take off all these like really hard edges, and then what you get, then you drop down to about 20%. I did that by hitting 2 on my keyboard, and then that allows me to thin out a little bit of this other stuff, and it really starts to create this nice feel that my character is actually standing with grass over his feet, right? Okay, so now that I have that done, let's adjust anytime we want to. We can make adjustments to our image in any layer or any selection. To do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my mech really quick. With my mech selected, I'm going to come over to image, and I drop down to adjustments, and you can see now I have the ability to adjust brightness, contrast levels, exposure, all these different options. We're going to scroll down right now, and we're going to come down here to color balance. I can't even see without my glasses. Where to go? So this is why I don't use this anymore, because I just hit Control B. Boom, and it pops up. I'm used to the hotkeys. With this up right now, looking at my mech is standing in a green field, but he's very gray. So I want to add a little bit of the local color around him to him. So what I'm going to do is I have midtone selected. I'm going to go over to green, and I'm going to slide the green just a little bit over, and I've now added a little bit of green to him. Now look, let me come back to highlights, and if I go, oh my God, I went the wrong way. He doesn't look good with a lot of magenta on him, but I can come back over here and slide a little bit. Now you can see, now he's getting, this term we used is washed out. He's really washed out right now. He doesn't look good. I don't need to put much in the highlights, so I'm going to hit 0 to go back to where he was. And I might just move it over just a teeny bit like that, so there's a little bit of a green tint on the highlights. I hit OK. So now if I hit Control Z, you can see the difference between where he was black and white and now how he's a little bit greener and he's matching the environment a little bit better, right? Okay, so now we're going to talk about a shadow. Let's make a shadow of our guy. Well, here's the easiest way to make a shadow. Instead of us having to find the light source, trace it, we know light is coming in this direction. It's coming from the far right-hand side, and it's hitting because we have a light side and a dark side. So this is how we make a shadow. Come over here and select the mech himself, okay? And you can either right-click on the mech, on the layer, and go to Duplicate Layer, or you could grab the layer and drag it down to the layer icon, in which it'll make a duplication, okay? Once we've made a duplication, okay, hit V, your move tool, and bring this guy over here, okay? once you have them over there, go back under Image, go to Image Adjustments, and come down here to Levels. Okay? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to suck out all the color out of our guy and make him completely black as a silhouette. There's two ways to do that. One way is we can go to Levels like this, and if I come down here on the bottom of the level and I'm looking at my duplicate, if I move the black over, do you see I suck out all the black and it gives me white? But I can do the same thing on this side where I grab this and I pull it this way and I suck out all the white, and now I have him as a black silhouette. Okay? Now, if I didn't want to do that, another way you can do that is you can come under Image, Adjustments, and you can scroll down to Hue and Saturation, which is the same principle. I could come down here to Saturation. I can completely desaturate any color out of him, and then I can move the Lightness tool all the way to one side, and I get the complete dark. So I could use levels, I could use curves, or I can use Hue and Saturation. Anyway, once you have this right now. Do you see this? That's going to be his shadow. Okay? But we need to get that in the same position where it would lie on the floor. So everybody with me? Hit Control T for transform again. This time, you'll notice if you hover your cursor outside of the box, you get an arrow. Do you see the arrow, the curved arrow? I'm hovering outside of the left side of the box. If I hold down Shift, I can turn that like this. Like so. See how I did that? Okay. Now, remember how I can adjust my guy? I couldn't put that shadow behind him because the rifle is coming towards me, correct? In this shadow, the rifle is going away from me. So grab the top of these arrows and transform and pull them down like that. So now the rifle is coming towards me. You see how I did that? Okay? Hit Enter. You now have this black silhouette. Okay? Bring that over and drop it sort of by the guy for where the shadow would go. Okay? Now, there's a problem. My shadow right now is underneath the green layer, which is fine, right? Let's put it up above the green layer. Okay? And now what I need to do is the shadow's way too black, right? It's solid, opaque black. I need to come in here and I'm going to drop the opacity down of the shadow like this. Okay? I'm going to try to move it over and get it so it's right about there. And now I'm going to erase. I'm going to erase by hitting E, and at 100%, I'm going to erase where it's overlapping part of the body, like that. See how I did that? Now we have a little bit of a shadow overlapping part of the character going on in the grass, okay? Now, when I erased, I have the soft edge brush. I don't like that soft edge brush because what it did is it made it a little fuzzy there. So instead of erasing, I'm going to go to my Lasso Tool and I'm just going to select where that is, like that, and I'm going to delete it. Now I have a nice crisp edge to where the shadow is. Okay? However, there's two things wrong with my shadow right now. Does anybody know what they are?
It's too dark.
One is it's too dark. Another thing is the shadow is not going over and adapting to the typology of the ground plane. What is the ground plane right now? Is it flat and shiny? No. It's a bunch of elements all casting out everywhere, right? It's a bunch of like grass and weed or whatever. The other thing is what do shadows have in them? Shadows have gradations in them. Shadows start darker, closer to the subject matter, and as shadows recede out, they get lighter. That's the importance of you guys eventually taking a rendering class where you're rendering and you're looking at how light and shadow works. So as shadows recede away, they get a little bit lighter. So what I'm going to do right now is go back to my eraser tool, And I'm going to drop my eraser tool down to about 10. And I'm going to very lightly come across. I'm actually going to go down. I'm going to hit 0.5. So I'm only at 5%. And I'm going to very lightly sort of come in here and go along the edge of my shadow. And I'm going to try to blend him in a little bit by getting rid of that distinctive hard edge. So now, by doing this, sometimes I need a little bit more power. So I have my left hand on the keyboard. I'm going to jump up and hit 20. And I'm going to make my brush a little smaller. And I'm going to hit some of the little edges right here. And try to get rid of that definitive hard edge over part of the wheat there. So then I'm going to go back down and go to 0.5. So my left hand tends to be on my keyboard quite a bit because I'm adjusting the eraser pressure all the time. I'm going to 0.5, I'm going to 10, I might go up to 40 or 50. It depends on where I'm erasing and how I'm trying to get that effect to feel. So I'm erasing right now at 0.5 and it's taking a long time. So I'm going to go back up and hit like 1 or go to 10. I'm going to erase some of this hard edge. I might come over here, erase some of this. Go back down to 10 again. Go back to 0.5. Okay, I'm going to go back to 0.5, hit 0.5. And you can see now what starts to happen to part of my shadow. It's blending in a little bit more. And if I go back to opacity and drop the opacity down a little bit more, he starts to blend in a little bit and I get a nice little soft shadow. Now, let me show you another cool little trick. Put your shadow at 100% in opacity, right? Everyone with me? Put the shadow at 100%. To the left of opacity where it says normal, click that little icon and you can tell the layer to behave in different ways. So slide this down to multiply and look what happens to my full opacity shadow. Nothing. Okay. Now go back and go down to overlay. It changes the way the shadow or that layer interacts. Overlay doesn't really work. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to go to hard light. Hard light's doing. What about soft light? Soft light isn't really working. Okay. Well, what about darken? Now darken's the same. Multiply didn't work the way I thought it would have worked. So anyway, by doing this, depending on what your layer is, you can adjust the way the layer is interacting with part. So I think this example is not the best example for me to show you because it's not really doing what I wanted it to do. I wanted it to get a nice gradient and it's sort of working a little bit weird in the color settings, which is fine. So I'm going to put it back on the normal, but I'm just mentioning that because you can go into your piece and you could easily adjust. And to be honest, I like my shadow about right there. I think that's working pretty good. Now, if I wanted to be really picky, which I am, being an artist, I could go back right now to my field and I'm going to grab, with my Marquee Tool, some of the grass that's by the shadow. And I'm going to copy that, paste that, and bring it up and put it up above my mech. And you see what I have now? It's blocking the shadow. And I'm going to come in with my eraser again, and I am going to erase a bunch of this and get it to work the way I want it to work. So the shadow feels very realistically like it's blending into the grass, and there's a little bit of overlay. So what I'm doing is I'm lightly erasing some of this at different spots where I can see some of the shadow of my character come out. Okay. I can even come back up and adjust a little bit of the opacity of that and see how much more of the shadow is underneath. So look, by going all the way to 0, I see the shadow. I could bring up a little bit more of the grass, back to full power, then I know where to erase a little bit, and erase in here a little bit. Okay, I'm at 20%. I might go up to about 30, erase a little bit more. So do you see what's sort of cool about that? Is I'm getting the shadow to blend in a little bit to some little different parts. by putting that little overlay of the grass on top, which is pretty cool. Can be very effective that way. Okay, so that's one of the cool things about Photoshop. I can even then come back down and I realize my met copy, which I didn't label as my shadow. Now I'm going to label it shadow. Okay, that if I adjust that a little bit, because with the green over it, it sort of blends in. I'm thinking right about there I get a pretty nice little shadow. I have a green tint on my guy. I've blended his feet in, and voila. Some of you in this class have done your first copy and paste and blend by using some of the base tools in Photoshop. Okay, all right, which is pretty cool because it's giving you, in fact, just a quick overview. Think of everything we did today for your very first time. We opened up other files, we downloaded images, opened up other files, copied and pasted them, made selections, learned how to take a selection and minus from it. We learned how to take a selection and add to it. Okay, you learned how to use hotkeys. You learned how to paste one image from one photo into another photo. All right, don't forget too, I also have the clouds in the back. So if I wanted to, I could have grabbed those clouds and I could put them behind my mech. And I could change this whole environment. In fact, if I want to look at those clouds, I could even go to Control B, and I could put a little bit of a green tint to them, like that. And I can even blend it into my environment a little bit more. Look at the difference. See it? You don't notice it until you hit Control Z. But see, I could take him, put him in another environment, put different clouds in, blend it all together, and get it to match. Okay? That's a lot to do for the first day. And you guys got to use selection tools. You got to learn about how image adjustments, how you can adjust any layer, any selection you make, okay, with going into image adjustments. We had hue, saturation, color balance, all those other options, okay? All right, so that's it. To me, that is a pretty successful day for your first experimentation, and that allowed us to cover the selection tools, because what's going to happen the next class when we come in is I'm going to show you how to start loading brushes, using brushes, and painting with brushes. But in order to do that, I need you to understand how to make selections, because a really great way to do textures in Photoshop is to be able to select little areas and make them more pronounced. And we can make them more pronounced by using the levels tool, by using color balance, and all these other options. And then we're going to start getting into the digital paint side. So we're going to paint some textures, so you learn how to use brushes. I'm going to give you my own custom brushes that work very well. Later on in the class, I'll show you how to create brushes. Okay, the stock Photoshop brushes really aren't too great. And then there's even a point where there's even these other custom brushes I have that almost mimic oils down to like the spot. And learning how to use those is really, really great, because then we start getting into a much more advanced level. Unfortunately, in this class, some of you might not have the best drawing or design skills. So there are times where I might provide you a loose line drawing for something, and you'll be looking at something else and then painting what you're seeing into that, learning how to use the painting tools and submenus and everything else in Photoshop. Okay, Photoshop is such an expansive program that there are people that use it realistically just to do what we call photo blending and kit bashing, which is what we did today. So technically, this is what we call a photo bash, where you take parts of other realistic photos and you bring them together to make an environment take place. Okay, so let me stop the recorder.